You're listening to Genuine Chit-Chat. This show is for real.
Hello there guys, and welcome to another episode of Genuine Chit-Chat. This week I am joined by Jamie of the Talking Dad UK podcast. Now, some of you may already have heard of the Talking Dad UK podcast. It is a really cool podcast. I think I've mentioned it a few times on the show, but I actually appeared on episode 21 of that podcast. So if you want to listen to my appearance on Jamie's show, I've included a link to that in the description. It can be found anywhere that you're listening to Genuine Chit Chat, so yeah, check that out. But in a little bit of detail of what we talk about. So Jamie starts by talking about the premise of his show and why he started it, and then we talk about randomly our mutual love of religious architecture like churches and things, and then we talk about cemeteries for a short while, and then we talk about the bulk of the conversation, which is why or how many men aren't comfortable discussing their emotions and things, and then we talk about having long form conversations, getting guests for the show, and then towards the end we talk about music. So they're really broad strokes of the conversation that we have, but it's a lot of fun. There's a lot to get your teeth into here, and I had so much fun talking with Jamie. He's such a nice guy, and I just want to get as many of you listeners over to his podcast as well, because he really does deserve it. So aside from that, guys, obviously check out the details in the show notes or description or wherever you're listening to it, whatever the relevant name of the text that goes along with the show is, because I've included links to Jamie's website as well as some of his merchandise, which is quite cool, as well as his social media, and obviously my appearance on his show, because why not? But aside from that, guys, just check for the show notes anyway, because there's always information on the previous episode, additional information on this episode, previous episodes I've done, all kinds of stuff is in there. I take a lot of time doing them, so with that in mind, guys, I'll leave you to listen to my conversation with Jamie, and then I will be back at the end to give you guys some more insight on what's coming up over the rest of the year, and a few other bits and pieces here and there too. So thank you as always for listening, guys. I appreciate you, and I'll talk to you guys at the end. So I give you Jamie of Talking Dad UK. Welcome to Genuine Chit Chat, where we have honest conversations with interesting people, and I'm your host, Mike Burton. And there we go, I have pressed record. So, I am here today with Jamie from the Talking Dad podcast, and we spoke because you very kindly had me on your podcast a few weeks ago now, I think it aired, and I'll include a link in the show notes and whatnot, and we had such a delightful conversation, we thought let's have another one on my show. And the last time we spoke was a big mixed bag of things. Obviously the common theme of your show was it's called Talking Dad. That's fairly self-explanatory, being a dad and fatherhood and those sort of things. So why don't you explain a little bit more and expand on that of why you started the podcast and what it's generally about for anyone who hasn't already checked out our conversation.
Yeah, well, hello. The return leg. I started the Talking Dad UK podcast in January. It was something I'd had a bit of an idea of doing something along these lines 5 years ago when we had our first son. Just obviously going through that process of sort of pregnancy with my wife, and just sitting in outside, sitting in maternity wards and that kind of thing while my wife goes for all the appointments, and just thinking to myself, there's not really a great deal of information or just things for dads to look at and read, and unless you went and bought parenting books and all that kind of a little bit old-fashioned stuff. We kind of had sort of ideas that of how we were going to do things anyway, but I don't think anybody really knows, and nobody can tell you, and nothing prepares you really for when you actually start. So I didn't do anything with it at that time 5 years ago. Obviously COVID hit, we were in lockdown. A couple of my friends actually started their own podcast. I know something they had been or one in particular had been really interested in doing, but wasn't quite sure how they were going to do it just on his own, and he just got together with a couple of mates, and I was listening to theirs last year. I thought, you know what? I listen to a lot of podcasts, and how difficult can it be? I'm in the middle of a sort of lockdown, and we had some house renovations going on when my wife was pregnant with our second, and I just thought, you know what? Let's just do a Talking Dad podcast. I'll initially sort of meet up and do Zoom chats with all the dads I know, whether it be friends, family, and then from there we'll just see how it progresses. And it's opened up quite well. I've had chats with people that I've only sort of met through social media, dad bloggers and things like that. People I've come across that have followed me, or I've been following them for a little while. So we've just been talking about dad stuff, really. The sort of tagline is we discuss all things dad, and that covers, you know, a massive range of everything, really. Kids, fatherhood, parenting, but at the same time, but not so much. We don't get into sort of sports kind of arena because that can be quite dividing. But we'll talk about hobbies, and we'll talk about health, fitness, mental health, just how you're doing basically, and how you're getting on through lockdown, and how the kids are managing. And obviously now the world's opening up a little bit, and I've been doing it for a little while now, so the conversations have just moved on and progressed naturally into other areas. And we talk about music. You know, I've had a couple of guests on that aren't dads, but, you know, have plans to be one day. Or, you know, one of them was even said, you know, he said, I haven't got any kids, but I'm a dad to 2 bulldogs.
Fair enough.
And I'm the dad, and I'm talking, and it's my sort of Friday night release. And we just had a chat about music because I used to go to school with that particular guest, and we played in a couple of bands and things like that, and we were just catching up.
Oh, that's cool.
And that was it, really. Just get conversation going with people, and sort of encourage dads and men to talk more. That's the long-winded version. That's the
version we like on this show. We like when people can just be long-winded. I mean, that's my whole thing, is only ever asking long-winded questions. But it's wonderful. You know, your shows I really enjoy it as well, and because you've been doing it for over a year now, you can hear the progression and things. Like, as I said, I think when I was on your show before, it was like from the start it's still really good, but even it's getting better, you know, sort of the momentum's picking up. And one thing I've said many times on this podcast and other podcasts I've guested on is that when you listen to a lot of podcasts, that's cool, and you can start certain conversations with a few people about podcasting. But then when you actually start podcasting, it's weird how quickly you meet so many other people, and certain individuals you speak with, you know, on a weekly basis or whatever, just sending messages every now and then or more frequently. And there's other people that you don't speak to that much, but you have the odd interaction with. And there's certain people I know who I don't really message, but every so often they just come on my show and we have a catch up, you know, for an hour or so. So it's just like, it's one of those weird things that I think that people who, especially when you have podcasts like yours and mine, whereas you have to have a different guest each time as well. So you kind of have to get to know the person you're going to have on before having them on, in a sense, you know, at least if you know they've got a podcast, generally speaking, you at least listen to some of it, you know, just so you get a vibe of who they are and what they're kind of about. Yeah. So it's one of those unexpected things I've thought about when, like, I'm sure, did you, with your friends podcasting, did they talk about the community element of it, or what kind of, did you have any idea that you'd make this many connections this quickly?
Not initially. Obviously I was hoping to, in terms of more followers. I'm following more people, making more conversation just on social media with people, dads, podcasters, etc. So then that potentially turns into more guests and more things we can collaborate on and do things with. But not initially through speaking to my friends. Theirs was just sort of three mates joining up over Zoom every weekend during lockdown, having a few beers and just talking all sorts, really. Sometimes they have a topic, other times they just talk rubbish. And, you know, I've had episodes like that myself. But yeah, I think it's, as I've gone on in the process of doing it, I've got a little bit more relaxed. I've had a little bit more fun with it. Obviously, early ones, you think, oh, I need guests. I need to create some sort of interview style podcast. And you can almost make it a little bit too formal. And, I started off a little bit that way. I could have a big pad of things to talk about because I thought I don't want to leave dead air on the podcast, and I need to be asking questions all the time and it needs to flow. And then after a couple, I just thought, you know what, we need to just relax a little bit. It's you know, if I was meeting up with mates or a couple of dads and I bumped into somebody in the pub or in the supermarket, or well, not in lockdown, but in the supermarket or a cafe, you just stand and have a chat, wouldn't you? And 20 minutes would disappear and on you go with your day. So I thought maybe they're a bit more relaxed and just sort of see where the conversations go. And we've talked about all sorts. I mean, last time we spoke, we ended up talking about bread and butter and toast, and that conversation came from nowhere. We discussed a little bit about male evolution,
We did.
fatherhood evolution, and I'm pretty sure we butchered it. But I mean, nobody's
I think so.
nobody's told me, so we're okay for now. And I've talked to blokes about football, about sports, about music, and crosses the sort of generations a little bit as well, because I've spoken to some people who are slightly older than me and dads, and they've got teenagers, and whereas I've still got quite young kids. So the conversation just tends to just open freely, really, and just flow. And I feel like that's a little bit easier for me.
Yeah, and I want to ask. There's two paths I can ask you here now. It's either where you're recording from, or something else. I'll go with the recording from, because I've written a note about the other one. I'll try and remember to go back to that. So when we last spoke, were you in a room of your house, and now you're in a shed? Like, just vaguely let our listeners and me know why the change out of interest.
Yeah. Last time we spoke, I was in the dining room, and that's generally where I record. But sometimes with the baby now being around, or if he's awake, or he's teething, or he's not well, he can have a bit of a habit of starting to scream halfway through a recording. And even though I'm downstairs in a different room with doors shut, it does pop up on the recording sometimes, which I do my best to edit out on my podcast. But I thought, with me coming on somebody else's, I'd go to a quieter space. And a few months ago, probably the beginning of the year as well, maybe March time, because we haven't long moved into this house. We got a shed for my wife, because she does. This is where she lives. No, she does.
Lock her in the shed every night.
She does arts and crafts, and she needed a space to store all of her stuff, and somewhere out away from the kids' little fingers touching things. So, but I insulated it really well, knowing that she doesn't like the cold and she's going to have to use it through the winter months. And it actually turns out like a really good little podcast studio, and I'm quite envious that I have created a nice podcast studio and I can't use it. So on the nights where I think there's potential for the baby to be noisy, I've started coming down here. And that's why it just looks like a bit of wood paneling at the back and some insulation board on the ceiling. But it works quite well.
I love it. I think it's great. Like, me and Megan, we're looking to buy a house next year, and we've already started going to house viewings. We've spoken to a mortgage advisor, gone for all of those sort of bits and pieces, got money saved and etc. And we've been viewing houses and things. There was one place we saw which we didn't get to view because it got snatched up immediately, and it had a little shed that had power in it, and I was like, oh, that could be. And Megan said as well, she was like, if we got this place, even though at the moment we're more looking than actually specifically going to buy, if we found the perfect place, then we could. But it's more early next year we're kind of looking to. But we're just like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if I got a nice little shed and I had it nice and insulated, and then I could just be in my nice podcasting studio when Megan was doing whatever. Yeah. We're planning on getting a dog as well next year, once we've got a house. And it's like, if we get a dog and they're a loud boy, or loud girl, but it's one of those things where it's like, do I want to have to keep editing noises out in the background as well? So I'm actually, this room's fine, but occasionally get people, because I'm in a flat upstairs, stomping, or if I don't know, something like it's right next to a main road, like there's a window there. So it's some ambulances and whatever go past. But having a nice little shed, it sounds. I'm envious. I'm going to come over to your place and start recording genuine chit-chat in your shed.
yeah, more than welcome.
Sneaking in the middle of the night when everyone's asleep.
Yeah, well, we've got a garage as well, which is detached from the house, and we don't use it for a car or anything because it's in the back garden essentially. And that was going to be my little man cave, because eventually I got that in my old house. I could turn the garage into a man cave / gym. And it was a good little space that I had for a couple of years, and then we moved. So I was going to do that in this garage here. I was going to partition it off and have half all the rubbish that can't be in the house and goes in the garage. And I was going to have a little section at the back that was had a door and panelled off, and I could have a little man cave / recording podcast studio. And that was an ideal little plan, but ran out of time, lacking in money after we did the house renovations, and the roof has got a bit of a leak to it. So I didn't want to spend money on insulating it all and boarding it all out and then putting electric equipment in there for it to potentially leak and ruin everything. So I'm going to wait until next summer, and hopefully I can replace the roof and create that little space of my own there. And it's away from the house again, so you don't get the noise. And we're in quite a quiet area around here, a sort of, I guess, the night time or late evening. It's there's not a lot of traffic and not a lot of noise going on.
That's cool. I have interest, not a specific address because I don't want you revealing that on a podcast, but whereabouts in the UK are you? I think I asked you this before, but I've completely forgotten.
Yeah, I'm in Cheshire in the northwest.
Right, I see. Yeah.
So it's sort of in between. Have you ever heard of Crewe?
Yeah.
So it's next to Crewe. It's like a couple of miles outside of Crewe, and it's in between sort of quite busy town and rural areas, but it's all starting to merge into a bit of a, I don't know, I think they've put an application in to become a city, but I mean it's not.
Well, the interesting thing is the only difference between a town and a city is in the UK is a cathedral. If a town has a cathedral, it becomes a city, except for Plymouth and Southampton, which I'm from Southampton, because Plymouth and Southampton are two towns that have such huge populations, they just gave them city ships. Without needing cathedrals, but every other city is just a city because it's got a cathedral.
I wasn't aware of that.
It's interesting, and I found that out a while ago, and I recently looked up like the differences between a church and a cathedral and I almost said a basilica. There you go. I almost said basilisk. Then I was like, that's a mythical being, not a type of church. So I've looked up things about that as well, but I'm trying to remember what the differences are. But it's the differences between a church and a cathedral are very slim. I think one's just got more of a living space and things, and then there's all kinds of different varieties on holy buildings and what makes one and not the other, and if it's got a priest in it or a bishop or what. And it's just like, I don't know. I'm just a moron when it comes to this sort of thing.
I couldn't tell you now if we had a cathedral. We've got a load of churches, I know that, but I'm not particularly religious. So
no, me neither.
I mean, the only times I'm in them sort of places is when somebody gets married there, it's a christening or somebody's died, unfortunately. So
yeah,
it's I know that's the same for a lot of people, but we don't go there every Sunday. It's not something we do. But
no, we don't have that either. I mean, I will say I'm not a religious individual at all. But what I do love is religious architecture. I love it. When you go to Spain, you've got La Cathedral. I can't remember what it is, but it's the one that's always being rebuilt with the scaffoldings and stuff. There's that. And whenever we go, me and Megan go anywhere, we always like to go to, like in Italy, they've got loads that are beautiful, just all over, that you just go to any even a small town, they've got they make, especially because Italy is quite a religious country. Yeah, it's just, even if you go to like mosques and things in other countries as well, or even in the UK, I just, I've said before on the podcast, I don't believe in God, but how beautiful buildings are that are religious buildings is almost enough in itself to be like, how did they make this before? When you get the really old ones, you're like, how did they make this before modern day sort of technology? And it's like, that's almost more of a convincing argument for God than anything else, for my opinion. Not to say to anyone that they can't believe in God or anything like that. It's just, for me personally, I did when I was younger and don't anymore. But I just, the buildings, I love them. I think they're absolutely incredible. Yeah, it's like you say, whenever you go on holiday or you go abroad, or even in this country, I mean, there's always somewhere some form of religious building, and they're usually really good for wandering around or taking pictures, or when you're allowed to. And like you say, in Italy, I've got I'm half Italian, so I've got family that live in Sicily, and the churches and everything over there is just my family comes from a small port town. It is really small, really. It's working class fisherman's village, really, is what it started off as. And but the church there is beautiful, and the big oversized doors and the windows, and that at one point the port town was really run down, but the church was the place that always sort of seemed to get the money, and they always kept that looking nice. And then obviously everything else comes back full circle and catches up a little bit. But and even graveyards, which is a strange thing to like to wander around, but I do like to wander around. And where I used to live was right next to the cemetery in the town. So every time I took the dogs out for a walk, we used to go through there. And it's just really
I don't know what the word is, but it's nice and peaceful, as you might expect.
Solemn, maybe?
Yeah. And, looking at some of the old gravestones, and you're looking back to, years and years old, and you can still read the dates.
Yeah. Some of them are hundreds as well, especially in England. Like there's the odd gravestone you can find, and it's like older than the Declaration of Independence. You're like, what?
Yeah.
They're not. I want to clarify to any non-UK listeners, that's not really common. It's not like you go to cemeteries and the majority are pre that time. It's normally when you've got cemeteries that are in really old cities or towns and things, it's normally like one or two will be super old, and then it kind of goes out from there. Most are modern. But I agree with you. There's some in Belgium as well from, I think, World War One that I went to on a school trip, and it's just rows and rows of these identical looking graves, which that obviously is quite different to a lot of UK graveyards, because it's got almost every single gravestone is different. Yeah.
Different styles. And look, going back to Sicily, they would have I can't remember the word for them, but basically the whole family are in like a little bungalow.
Oh, like a tomb sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's all just sealed up, and the whole family just goes in there. Crypt, yeah. You can wander around it, and it's like a little village, because they're all sort of built up.
Yeah.
So you just wander around, and it's like a miniature village. It's strange, but obviously you're still wandering around a cemetery. So interesting.
I do like places like that. It's always interesting as like just how humans celebrate life and death and deities and things like that, worship in a lot of ways. Like, not all cemeteries are religious, but it's just all of those sort of elements. But I want to actually ask, before I forget, which was the other pivoted conversation I mentioned slightly earlier, was on your show, have you had grandparents, like someone who is a grandparent talking about being a grandparent on your show? Or granddad, if we're going to be specific.
No, not yet. I don't think so. No.
Yeah, because I've listened to a few of yours, but I was like, I don't recall it, but I didn't want to be like, you need to do this. And you'd be like, yeah, that was episode 4. I was like, oh, that was one I missed,
I was actually, when I first prepared my list of who was potential guests when I first started, I was potentially going to interview my dad. But it's never got round to it. And he probably would do it, but I don't know whether it's his thing, particularly talking.
For the 100th episode or something, or some sort of special event.
I might have to do maybe like a remote recording of a short conversation and just include that, because I don't know if you would want to do like a full interview style type thing. But, I'm always open to speaking to granddads or stepdads or guardians or whatever,
That would be interesting, and the sort of some of the difficulties that come with, because I can imagine being like a stepdad to someone would be quite difficult. Like if they're really, really young, and this is going to go into certain places, but like obviously depends on the situation. If it's something tragic, like the father passed away and then you are with the mum from very early on, then that is a slightly easier transition than the dad's still about and the kid's like 13 and they've split up. The dad and the mum have split up in quite unpleasant circumstances, and then he comes. So it's like that. There's quite a lot of. Being a dad in itself is, as people know, but also you do talk about in your podcast, it's got so many unusual challenges, I think would be the term. Like things one wouldn't, not just being a dad, being a parent or guardian, but being that kind of figure.
It's just things that pop up that you didn't really plan for or expect. But that's the whole sort of point of the podcast, is to have them conversations, talk about them as normal as possible, and make people realize that it's not an issue, it's not a big deal. Or if you've experienced something as a parent or as a father, then there'll be loads of other people that have probably had the same thing or very similar. And that was the kind of thing, really, because I think, generalizing a little bit, but as men, we're not good at talking necessarily. And when we do talk, we don't always talk about the right things. And you kind of have to find the bits within the information of what we're actually saying. Sometimes we are just talking rubbish and we are just having a laugh. And other times we might be saying, actually, I'm having a bit of a crap time. And you've got to pick out that out of the information, because some blokes won't just come out and say that. So, by people willing to come and have that conversation with me and me talking about my own stuff in general, then hopefully we're spreading that word a little bit that you can, let's just talk.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it in things. It's, Yeah, because there's certain individuals, it's quite layered. Like everyone is different in themselves anyway, but this is once again, we are both speaking in general. Generally, from what I've experienced with women is that they are more open to discussing their feelings with other people, and men usually aren't quite as much. Even many friends of mine, they are still, in air quotes, a modern man. They, aren't misogynistic or anything like that, or any sort of the traits one associates with men going back decades and decades and decades and decades, even potentially centuries. Not that level, but still, if they're completely progressive in certain elements, still to the degree of the modern man, they aren't receptive to talking about their feelings very much. And as you say, even I've got 3 brothers, and they each only discuss feelings in certain ways. Normally 2 of them only do it when they're drunk, and then one of them will only do it in like really small doses. And if you try and push it and be like, oh, you ask a bit more information, then it would just be like, no, you don't get anything now for a short while. When it's I haven't really thought about that. Yeah,
and I like to think at times I can be the friend of the group that can get that kind of information out of people. Sometimes it's backfired. Sometimes I've tried to have the conversation with the wrong person who really wasn't ready to have a conversation, and maybe I thought I knew him better than I did, and it backfired, and he wasn't happy about it. But that's that. We tried to have a conversation, didn't work. We'll talk about something else.
Yeah, that is quite. I think with I think a lot of men as well are very good at conversation diverting. Like my brother told me, one of my brothers or both of my brothers by blood have both remarried, so they're on their second marriages. And one of my brothers on their first marriage, he said, when he broke up with a person, he was telling people about it and things, and everyone's like, oh, how are you doing? Why did this happen? All these sorts of things. And he was like, whereas when he was telling this to me, and he was like, whereas with Dad, I called Dad and I told him, and he's like, oh, I'm really sad that you've broken up with him. Yeah. Did you see the Speedway results? And and Speedway, for anyone who's mainly in America, I would say, who doesn't know, Speedway is motorcycle racing. That was the sport of choice for my dad. And it was just that, and then my dad basically never spoke about it again. Like if my brother brought it up, or if in conversation, inevitably in a conversation, there would be discussions on who my brother was with next and what was going to go on with living or whatever. But like in general, it was like he never brought it up. He just talked about something else. And he was like, it's a weird thing because part of you wants to talk to Dad about those things, but equally part of you is quite happy he's not talking about it because you've just told the same thing to 20 different people, and it's quite refreshing for someone not actually necessarily to care as much as everyone else in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough thing, and I've had some people that I've asked if they'll be interested in being a guest on the podcast and have a chat, and a couple of people said a very similar thing, and that was that basically along the lines of, I don't think we need to talk about them type of things. Basically, it's dads should just get on with it. Men should just not really talk about feelings and stuff. And I was like, no, that's fair enough. I'm not going to push it. No. If you don't want to do it, fair. But it's not always that we're sitting down having a deep conversation and I'm asking for your innermost complex thoughts because I'm not a therapist. But if you want to come on and moan that your kid is doing something in particular that's really driving you round the bend over the past few weeks, then I could probably tell you something that my kid's doing as well. And we'll just have a little moan about it, and then we'll probably end up talking about something else, like DIY or bread, yeah, or cemeteries and churches, because that wasn't on the list for today.
No, it wasn't.
And that's how it starts, and then we end up on something else, and then by the time the hour's finished, or however long it takes, we probably both feel a little bit better after the conversation. It's a bit like exercise. You don't want to do exercise, but the days that you force yourself to go, generally you feel better afterwards.
Yeah, because we spoke about that on your show, didn't we? It's those times where it's like, you have a certain guest on and you were excited at the time to invite them on, and they say yes, and you're, oh, cool. And this isn't every time, but on the odd occasion, and that you've just had a busy week or whatever, and it's just like, I could probably do without doing this. And then you do it, and you, before starting up and things, you're like, oh, okay, this is going to be, I'm going to be tired or whatever. And then as soon as you start, you're like, this is great. This is why I do this as a choice and as a hobby and things. It finishes. You're like, why was I thinking this wasn't, you don't even think consciously this isn't going to be good. I think it's just kind of somewhat human laziness. It's even when you do like anything, something that you're really excited about, like a gig or something, or like I really love this band, I can't wait to see them live, and it gets to me like, I can't really be arsed, I want to stay in, but it's like, but I paid money to go and see these people.
You can look forward to it all week, and it's the highlight of your week. You can't wait for it, and the day finally comes, and you just think, oh, I can't be asked to travel to wherever it is the gig is and book into a hotel or whatever, and then I've got to go out and be surrounded by people. I just want to finish work and go home and do my nighttime routine and go to bed. But you paid for it, you got to go to the gig. It's similar. We've had similar conversations. But then as a doing this podcast, taking it sort of semi-seriously, I do take it regularly. I do take it seriously, of course, but you don't. There are them days where you might feel exhausted yourself and you're just struggling to get yourself up for it. But then you feel like you've got to do it. But then you also feel like, well, am I doing the listeners a bit of a injustice by coming on half asleep and not, maybe I'm not really myself and I might not get the most out of the guest and all that. But then can't keep cancelling people and putting people off whenever you're tired, because you're not going to run out of guests, aren't you? So it's a bit of a balance. I suppose that's one of the things as we've carried on, I've sort of questioned myself in terms of, committing to podcasts, and then something, even something like the kids are ill, can't be helped and probably need to rearrange. Yeah. But it's that feeling of letting people down, or, people, listeners don't necessarily come easily on a new podcast or a small indie podcast, do they? So the few people that listen every week or every month or whatever, you don't want to let them down by putting rubbish out.
Well, on my show, sometimes I do.
I've put stuff out that I thought wasn't as good as other stuff, and it went down really well and people enjoyed it. I think, that's the whole thing about, are you a, do you sit yourself in one lane and you're a formal interviewer of a podcast, or are you just someone who can have a bit of a chat and a laugh and it can go anywhere? And, listeners coming from everywhere. They're going to pick out the bits they like, aren't they? And they're going to find bits in it that they want. And you just kind of have to sometimes cover all bases, but also stick to what you started with and the reason you started as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of it with podcasting especially is trying to be, this is going to sound so cheesy because it's on my own podcast, but be genuine. Like, my show, just in that way, like, one of the things I used to hear about when I still listen to Scroobius Pip and Joe Rogan, but like, because, especially Rogan, because he's one of the biggest. I don't listen to him like I used to, but I do still listen to occasional episodes that intrigue me. Yeah. And people just say, like, one of the best things about Rogan is like, I'm not a big fan of like Miley Cyrus's music necessarily. Excuse me. Miley Cyrus is not, I don't have a problem with any of her music. I just don't like much of it. Yeah. But when she was on Rogan's podcast, I was really interested to hear what Miley Cyrus for 3 hours had to say about general life and that sort of thing. And it's with a podcast like his, like, if I got paid the amount he did, or even probably 1% of the amount that he did, or even 0.0001% of what he got paid, I'd probably be fine to do that. But like 3 hours is a very long time. Yeah. And it's very, very difficult, unless you're specifically playing a character, to somehow be disingenuous to the audience. Excuse me. Lord, that's a horrible noise. So I was writing down my own coughing, disgusting noise.
I need to do that. I need to practice that.
Yeah, I normally, I'll write it down with a notepad.
Yeah, because I'll try and keep it in my head. It was roughly about there, but then when I'm editing it in 2 weeks' time, I can't remember where it was. I'm going to have to listen to the whole thing and go all the way through.
That's the only reason I've started taking notes in certain times, or even like I put little keywords down occasionally when like I cut out snippets as well of conversations. So it's like sometimes if someone says something and I'm like, oh, that sounds like a good representation of the conversation we're having so far, I'll make a note. And it's like, with people I've said before, when I'm making a note, if I'm looking down, I'm not interested in the conversation. It's normally I'm so interested, I want to make a note about it. Yeah. But with like Rogan's podcast being like 3 hours long and stuff, with people even that I'm not even that interested necessarily, people who you don't get to hear from, like Elon Musk or whatever, it's interesting because you can't hide who you are for 3 hours straight, really, without something to listeners being like, he's hiding something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and you're you're probably a fan of Joe Rogan and how Joe Rogan can get the guest to open up or get the guest to join his conversation. Same with Scroobius Pig. I like that podcast. I listen to that, and especially because he's got that kind of background of coming up and doing his music, but coming up and doing it all sort of himself.
Yeah.
And self-produced and self-made, and then moves into podcasting. And I think he's got most of the people he talks to, whether that's musicians, actors, other podcasters, comedians, they've all got that kind of similar story and background. So before he even starts having a conversation and asking them questions, they've got that element of familiarity with each other, that they've got that background to build on. And whether that's just a good host and a good podcasting in general, I seem to think that helps in him getting the best out of his guests. But I suppose with podcasts as well, your guest has got to want to come on your podcast, haven't they? Because it's not it's not your publishers or anything sat in the background saying, "Oh, you're on Good Morning Britain this morning. You've got to promote your book or your DVD or whatever it is." They've got to want to come on your podcast, haven't they? And whether or not that's on a big scale or small scale, but they've got to want to do it, and you've got to be up for it when they agree to come on. I know you've spoken to some people who've a bit out there and a bit with a bit of name, or they've worked in film and stuff, and maybe you might think, oh, they'll never say yes to coming on my podcast. But I've never thrown my net out there and asked anyone. I'm not, that I think is a bit too unattainable. I've not tried yet.
It's a weird feeling.
How does that work?
You have to basically understand that 1 in probably 10 will even respond. That's probably the big part of it. So like when I had Claudia Gray on my podcast, which was probably the first, I mean, I had a few musicians on that were big in their circles, but Claudia Gray she's a Star Wars author. And so she's written quite a few Star Wars books, and she's in the You High Republic books as well, that in that realm were quite big. And when I messaged her, I also sent messages to about 5 other authors I really liked, and only her publicist came back to me. And then from there, they were like, "Oh, cool, you're interested. Well, she's got a new book coming out, and you obviously like Star Wars a lot, so it'd be cool to have a conversation. We'll double check with Disney, and you have to send the questions in beforehand. But aside from that, yeah, go ahead." And then that worked really well. But there's been other Star Wars authors that I've been trying to get for about a year, and I'm in contact with their publicists. But because what generally happens is there's certain guests that have like maybe a quota of some sort, where it is like, okay, we need to go on this amount of podcasts and talk about your book on this amount of things. But then when it's Star Wars or Disney or Marvel or anyone slightly higher up the chain of popularity, then it becomes, okay, well, these 10 podcasts, they get this amount of views, so we're going to reach out to them. Yeah. And then it's kind of like the author can only do maybe 1 podcast a week, and they only are going to do it for half a year. So you've only got a finite amount of spots, and then you just have to wait till the next kind of cycle. But most of the time you don't even get a response. So a lot of the time it's kind of easier in that way, because I feel like if they said no to everyone, the question with them would be like, oh, why not? But it's worth trying. I mean, it's also what I'd recommend to people is trying to be creative, because like there's for example, I had Paolo Villanelli on my podcast, who's a comic artist, and he does stuff for Marvel, and currently he does a lot of stuff for Star Wars. And it was a really cool conversation with him, and the way I got to speak to him is that I'm in contact with 2 people at Disney, one of which with Star Wars authors, and one of which is trying to be comic book stuff. But the comic book stuff person isn't at the moment even responding to emails, which is fine. They're busy. They've got stuff to do. I don't have anything against them. But trying to go through that route, I was trying to talk to Paolo Villanelli through this individual, and they weren't really responding to me, even though the other person at Disney gave me their details. I've spoken to people through them, but still. And it's just like that. So I was like, oh, well, how else can I talk to Paolo? And it's like, well, he's on his Twitter, but he barely does anything on there. Okay. And and on Twitter, his message button is off, so you can't direct message him. He's not on Facebook, or I'm not going to find his personal Facebook profile. A page of his isn't on there, and no one really uses it anymore. But on Instagram, he uses it quite frequently, and he's got a fair amount of followers, but it's not like hundreds of thousands. So I can't imagine he's getting private messages like every day or anything. So with him, I was like, oh, well, I'll go on his Instagram, and I liked a few of his things. I tagged him in a few things a while ago, and he liked the odd thing. And so I was like, okay. So then I messaged him, and yeah, he was really up for it. So it's one of those things where there's certain avenues you can try and they won't work. And the worst you'll get is a no. And as long as I'm sure you won't be, because you're very pleasant to speak to, but like if you're going to be a dick about it, then obviously not. If they're going to say, oh no, sorry, I don't want to, not, why the hell not? My podcast is great, but it's like, no, don't do that to any listeners. I'm talking mainly to listeners. Don't do that to people. If they say no matter what reason they have for it being no, you won't be able to convince them to say yes in a message. That you won't be, unless you're the best salesman ever.
Well, then you've got to have the opportunity and the time to do your sales pitch, haven't you? And
we got me Rogan. Come on my show and you'll be instantly famous the next day. It's like, maybe I will. You'll sell 10,000 copies of your book if you come on my show once. Let's do it.
That's it. Yeah. Interesting. I mean, maybe that's in the plans for next year. I'll try venturing out and asking a few random people that are also dads or that are involved in some form of dad stuff, groups, whatever, whether they want to join.
Follow account is a big thing, like, because there's certain guests who are, I'd love to have, here's an example, Mark Hamill. Obviously, I'd love to have him on the podcast. There are podcasts 10 times bigger than my podcast that would probably pay him to go on, and he's just so cataclysmically, massively famous that although it would be a dream, there's no point even asking. Yeah, whereas people slightly lower down, it's different. So I'd say, live your dreams, shoot for the stars, but maybe think about the highest and move it down a smidge, because I would want to talk to everyone involved with Star Wars ever. But if you also look up and be like, if you type in someone's name and you don't see any podcasts with them at all, you can probably assume if they're quite small, you think, oh, great opportunity, they can come on my show. But if they're quite big, you're like, they wouldn't do it anyway.
They're not going to do it,
yeah. But try. I think it's a cool podcast of yours, and the concept is simple enough to be interesting without you having to explain something mental. It's just like I'm talking about basically parenthood and being a dad and those sort of things, like your normal elevator pitch. And I think you'd be surprised how many creators, especially, want to come on. Like, as I said, you comic book artists, authors. There's loads of people, and I think you could do it. Yeah, I believe in you.
I'll start venturing next year. New Year's resolution: get a big guest. No.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll smash it. Well, I wanted to ask, actually, because you mentioned your band, or a band that you were in. So I don't think we've even spoken about music before. And I'm always interested to talk to people about music. So you were in a band. How did that come about? What were you doing in the band?
I was in a school band. Long time ago now. I played guitar. Rhythm. Always had dreams of being a lead.
Yep.
But the other guy that was in the band with me was better than me. So practice more. So he was lead, I was rhythm. We were just kids at school playing about. His like years ago, when my dad and his mum were younger, they'd played in bands around the sort of local circuit and knew of each other. Back in, what would it have been, the 80s? There was much more of a local music scene and much more of a circuit, and they were venturing, doing Battle of the Bands and things up and down the country and that kind of stuff. And they knew of each other, and then we ended up at school together and naturally sort of drawn to each other's sort of music tastes, and we both did music in GCSE. And it wasn't real. I've been around some schools now, and they've got a full-on studio and proper music set up and the whole kit. And it's amazing. We didn't have that. Ours was a little bungalow at the back of the school, and they had a small room with all the computers and keyboards set up that you had to do sort of your coursework and your assignments on. And they had a little rehearsal room where the drum kit was sort of wedged in the corner. 3 or 4 guitars and a couple of basses. None of them had a full set of strings on them. And we just used to go in there, make a load of noise, and the teachers at lunchtime, and the teachers used to come running across saying, "You're not allowed in here at lunchtime, you're making too much noise." And we did that quite a lot. We did a couple of sort of school shows, but and then my mate went off and did it at college, and he'd been in a couple of bands and stuff and done some production work. And I, unfortunately, didn't go to college and do it, and just stopped practicing over time, and wish I didn't, because now I'd be able to sort of play some good stuff. But I just kind of left it where it was, and went to watch bands and listen to music rather than trying to play it and be in a band. which, looking back, it was a mistake. I'd love to be in a band now. I think when I was younger, I had quite a little bit of stage fright, and I didn't want to be in a band on stage and, do pub gigs and that, and just, I don't know, I wasn't keen on it. But I'd be the guy stood at the bar having a beer listening to a new band, much easier. And but now looking back, I'd love to be good enough to be in a band and do a few gigs and that. I think it'd be great. But I've still got a couple of guitars, and I got my son, my 5-year-old, I got him one last Christmas, a good little guitar, and he likes to bash it around the house and drag it around the house. And he's more into his costume than he is playing. He's 5. But I mean, he puts on a good show. I think if he carries on with it and perseveres and practices, he's either going to be in a punk band or like a glam rock band.
Nice,
because he's all about the show and the frontmanship. So we'll see where it goes. But I mean, I need to practice more. Really, I need to find time. I just haven't got time.
Yeah, I mean, that's instrument. I tried learning guitar when I was younger, and I learned keyboard. I did a couple of grades of keyboard when I was younger as well. But it requires a lot of patience learning an instrument, and I can get frustrated if I don't pick up things quite quickly, because certain things I can pick up really quickly, and I'm like, I'm Billy Big Bollocks. I don't have to practice, and I'm immediately good at something. When I'm not, it's like, oh, this takes hard work and effort. Yeah. Whereas like, I self-taught myself quite a few things, but like when it depends what pace you go at and things, because whenever anyone picks up a guitar, you just want to be able to play your favorite songs ever immediately, and it's like you can't, unless you're some sort of musical god or child prodigy, you just can't do that. So it's a lot of patience, and I've thought, like, if I won an exorbitant amount of money on the lottery or something, and I just had nothing but time, I would probably eventually pick up an instrument, but I'd probably learn a language before I'd pick up an instrument now. I think, because I think they're both similar-ish in the sense of the kind of time you have to invest and how committed you have to be, and you have to keep at it. But what sort of music, out of interest, what sort of music do you listen to? Does your 5-year-old like respond to a lot of the music that you like to play?
I've been asked this a couple of times. I did a couple of podcasts around music, and I always say it's a difficult answer to give because I couldn't do it right now, but given a little bit of time, I could probably name a song from most genres that I like, or that I might listen to on some sort of weirdly long playlist. And but a bit of a mix of everything. But I suppose really at this point now, it's sort of classic rock / bit of metal, and obviously being my sort of age, indie rock and indie music as well, because that's what I was listening to when I was a teenager, and I still listen to it now. But then I also like a bit of punk, a bit of country music has crept in over recent years, and don't mind a bit of blues every now and again.
Nice.
I'd really quite like to be that old blues guitarist, with some torn jeans and some tatty boots, sat in the corner of the pub, just riffing away. Who's really quite good, but doesn't know how good he is. I'd like to be that old guy. But
occasionally muttering into like just a couple of like just a little few things here and there, and then playing like a little thing for like 2 minutes, and then just one line of lyrics again.
And I'd like to be that old guy in the corner of the pub. But again, probably takes a bit of time and patience, and they've probably been playing for years and years, which you don't see all that kind of stuff, do you?
No.
But music wise, a bit of all sorts, and hip hop and rap as well. And my favorite sort of music really is the ones that their influences come from different genres. So you can hear that within their music. Now they might fall into the category of rap or rock, but you can tell that they listen to Metallica and whoever else.
No, I know what you mean, because there's a lot of pop artists I like who like more. Like I like basically every genre of music, or at least like a few bands from every genre. So the widespread of my music taste is probably similar to yours, but I go to the extreme end as well. I like death metal and metalcore and like post-hardcore and heavy punk music, and then one step away from that is hard rock, classic rock, metal. Like I've seen Metallica live and things like that I like, but it's like then one step away is an indie, and then one step further is probably like pop, and then one step away from that is kind of like hip hop and things. But I do like some classical songs as well, so it is quite a mixing pot. And I think I'm the same sort of mentality as you, which is that I like it when you get heavy metal with symphony orchestras and things. I love a violin. I think violins are incredible. Megan loves a lot of things similarly, but Megan is more of a brass bands person, so she loves trumpets and a bit more ska sort of stuff when it's incorporated into pop, whereas I'm slightly more in the symphonic and metal. But we both love a lot of music of just artists that combine a lot of different things together.
Yeah, my mate's big into ska, and he probably is one of the reasons why I sort of got into it and listened to it. But we've listened to ska bands and been to see local sort of shows with ska bands and stuff. And I think it's just like energy music. I mean, if the music's got energy and there's something about it, whether that is a shredding lead guitar or a vocalist that really goes for it and takes you with them, or, you know, a decent drum solo and all that kind of stuff, it's just energy, and that kind of draws me in. Equally, well-written songs. Yeah. Either or, and you've pretty much win my listen. So... yeah, but I mean, if you look through my playlist, I mean, I'd listen to Motorhead quite a lot. I like Metallica. Yeah, I'd listen to Deep Purple.
I was going to say Deep Purple, one of those bands where it's like, if people don't know, like, what's the best thing about Deep Purple is the guitar work is some unfathomable level. It's like top tier, probably top 10 of some of the best guitar solos ever. Megan's dad, that's his favorite band. Funnily enough, and. I listened to Planet Rock quite a lot, and I was listening to them yesterday, and Tony Iommi's he's releasing some new music. Oh, really?
First time in 8 years, I think it was, since the last Sabbath album they did in, was it 2013, somewhere around there? Yeah,
was that the God Is Dead one?
Yeah. So he's just starting to bring out some new music, and, you know, you think, oh, is it going to be any good now? But you listen to it, and it is. It's just like listening to Sabbath. I mean, it's still Tony Iommi doing what he does, so it's still good. And but then, you know, I'd listen to one of my other favourite listens is Yellow Wolf, who's a rapper, from Alabama, lives in Nashville.
He's pretty good.
Mixes the styles of he can rap. He's a good rapper, but 100%. He also mixes his music up with a bit of rock and a bit of country and a bit of hip hop and all sorts. So I'm drawn to that kind of type of artist, really, that mixes a few things. And to me, I've said this before on one of my episodes. Before we had kids, we used to go out quite often, me and my wife, and we'd go out for a meal or we'd go out for a drink. And wherever we were, if we just stumbled into a pub or a bar that had some form of live music coming on, whether it was just a solo artist or a band, I'd always like to stay and listen to see what they were like. And I'd always give them a bit, a couple of songs. Just have a beer and have a chill and listen to the music. That's my idea of going out and enjoying myself, really.
Lovely.
I'm not one for hitting the clubs at 3:00 in the morning and the dance music, and that is not necessarily my taste. So that sort of stuff wasn't really on the agenda, but live music and I like that.
That's what you say, it's the energy thing, isn't it? It's the thing is music is so much more about a feeling. Like, I had a discussion on my show a little while ago with a friend of mine called Jack, and we talk about the music and movies. And it's like, with a movie, you watch it and you can basically, generally speaking, explain why it's good, why it's bad. And sometimes you can convince someone a bit more to appreciate a movie more or less. Sometimes someone can watch a movie and go, I didn't get that at all, blah, blah, blah. And you go, oh, well, actually, it's because of X, Y, Z. If you rewatch it and think about it this way, and they do that, you go, you know what, you're right. Whereas if you do that with music, they listen to a song, sometimes you go, you know the reason that's good? Because the violins at this part sound amazing. They do such a great thing with the chords. They go, okay. And they listen to it again. They go, nope, just doesn't really change. Like, I think music is something that is repetitive. Like, you have to have it to get into something you don't like. You have to listen to it quite a lot, and a lot of people don't want to do that. Like, with music, I find that there's growers, aren't there? Like, there's certain bands you listen to, you go, not a fan of that, and a mate of yours really likes them, and you're like, I don't get why you like that. And then a month later, you're like, this is amazing. How did I not like this? Yeah, I did an episode with a friend. The friend who's actually interested on being a guest on your show as well. And we talked about music, and he's the one who's into ska, ska, punk, reggae, all that kind of music. And that comes from his dad, that he was into it before him.
And we did an episode where we did a music chat about what he likes and why he likes it. And also we did an album swap. So I gave him Yellow Wolf as being one of my most listened to artists, and he gave me Streetlight Manifesto as one of his favorites. And we had to listen to the album that we chose for each other for about a week, 4 days. And then as part of that episode, we sort of reviewed it and gave our thoughts and, what track stood out. And I liked this part of that track, but I didn't quite enjoy these three. And if they were more like that track, I would have probably stuck with it a bit longer, that kind of thing. We haven't done it since. We said we were going to, but we just haven't got around to it. But I think that's giving yourself that opportunity to repeat something and listen to it over and over, because you're like, well, I know I've got to review this on Friday, so I've got 3 days. I'm going to play it at least once a day just to give it another chance. And then even if you never listen to it beyond Friday, it doesn't matter, because for the purpose of the review, it's done. But some of them tracks that I listened to from that album, from his album he gave me, are still on a playlist that I've got.
Yeah,
one or two of them still on there. So, and it wouldn't necessarily be something I would be drawn to straight away. But I like music. I wish I'd played for longer, and practiced more. But and now I've got kids, I just haven't got enough time.
Yeah, I feel with playing music and stuff, it is one of those things where it's like, I'd love to be able to create music and stuff. Like, I've thought about that element as well. Like, me and Megan, we just sing songs to each other all the time, and just sing little melodies where she'll say something to me, and then I'll hear it, but I won't respond intentionally, and then she'll say it again, and then I'll just say it back to her, like, again and again, but in like a little rhythm, and I'm stomping my feet and like singing it at her, and then in between me saying it, she'll say something else that's like a response, and it would just be this little funny, silly thing. And it's like, music is such a weird thing, because when we're in the car together or something, if one of us is in a bad mood or sad about something or anything like that, we've got a little playlist called Sing Songs, and it's just probably about 200 songs one of us knows all the words to, or thereabouts, or at least the chorus very well, and the other one at least tolerates it. But there's quite a lot in there that we both love and we both sing a lot. And it's funny that just singing to music together can really, like, it releases serotonin, I think it is, or endorphins, one or the other, and it's just like, it feels good. And it's like, singing music is just such a feeling. And like, there's certain people I know who are like, yeah, I don't really like live music much. And I'm like, have you ever seen a band live? Have you ever actually gone to a band like you actually really like the sound of, and you've actually gone to see them, and you haven't been, shit-faced drunk or on some sort of horrendous drug that you've tried for the first time ever, and you decide to go into a really packed pit? It's like, no, why would you do that? Like, go somewhere you want to see, be in a good state of mind. If you don't want to get in the crowd, don't. Just be somewhere comfortable and then listen to the music, and you can feel it, especially when you see certain bands live. You can feel the bass in your chest, and you just the energy of the place, and it's not like anything else, is it? It's incredible.
Yeah, and the really good bands, well, the really good musicians will always mix it up and have a play about with it. So if you've seen them a couple of times, they'll do the same song slightly differently, or they might bring a guest out, or they'll just fill, just the bits where like the singer goes off to have a coffee or go to the toilet or whatever, and the drummer will just fill, and like, that's as good as watching a gig in itself. Yeah, because you probably wouldn't get that on an album these days. 5-minute drum solo. Would you? Wouldn't. No one's going to pay for that. But a gig is part of the show, and it's part of the thing, isn't it? A lot of people will run off to the toilet or the bar at that point. But what are the chances that you're going to see? You've paid to see this band. What are the chances you're going to see a professional like that who's willing to, just play about in front of you? And yeah.
It's incredible. And your idea with the album thing, I forgot to say, is a really good shout. It's a cool thing. Me and my brothers often, all three of my brothers, got 2 by blood, 1 by law, and we're all into music. But like, I probably have the most diverse out of all of them. Like, where I said I like metal and rock and this sort of stuff, as well as rap and pop and all that sort of stuff. Like, one of my brothers specifically likes 2 or 3 of those, and then another brother likes 2 or 3 of those as well, and then another one likes all of it bar these 2 genres that he despises. And it's one of those funny things where just like, me and my brother sometimes, especially during lockdown, wouldn't necessarily call each other and talk, but we just occasionally send each other songs on Spotify. We don't even say anything about the song most of the time. Just it's a Spotify link, and then you go, oh, at some point in the next few days, I'll click on it. Sometimes it'll be a song, sometimes it'll be an album, and you just listen to it and be like, yeah, I don't mind this, or this is all right, or I really like this part, or not. And that's a good show. I like, because when people recommend you stuff, it can be, as long as you listen on your terms, I find that a lot of the time, unless I'm certain of the song, if I send someone a song I think they'll like, they'll listen to it when they want to listen to it. Whereas if they're around my house and I play them a song, we have to both sit there quietly listening to it. And although sometimes in the right moments it works, like I have music on in the background a lot of the time, but when you're like, you need to listen to this song, unless you're certain, they probably won't even like it because they're not in the kind of mood to be able to. They haven't kind of let the song fester in a sense. You're
sat really into it because this is your favourite song, and they're just like, I'm not getting it.
I'm not hearing what you're hearing, or I'm not feeling it.
Awkward. The night's over.
Amazing. I mean, Jamie, we could go on. I mean, we didn't even touch upon dogs or jiu-jitsu or philosophy or drinking really, or anything like that. And we're already at the hour mark. And I think that's a really good point to put a nice little full stop in this, because it just means that probably now next year in 2022, because as of recording this, and this will be out, I think this weekend, so it's going to be quite a sharpish one, because as it gets towards the end of the year, I'm recording less and less in advance. Early in the year, I record a few in advance. I'm normally like a month or two ahead, and I kind of swap around what comes out when, and blah, blah, blah. But as it gets towards the end of the year, it's like, no, let's just record one, and I'll be out this week, and then I'm recording one on Wednesday, it's out next week, and it's just a few more before Christmas, and then I have a little break. But it's been delightful speaking with you. We'll talk again in 2022 about some of the other things we've got. I've got written down. You're welcome on my show, and if anything else pops up. But please tell people, we've been talking about your podcast a little bit, and I'll put loads of details in these show notes, but please tell everyone where they can listen to you, where they can find you on social media, and anything else you want to add before we hang this call up.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for coming on my show. It was good to chat again.
Lovely.
I feel like we've probably got a third go around that we'll keep on the back burner for now. Talking Dad UK podcast. It's available wherever you get your podcasts, all the good places. And Talking Dad UK 1 is the social media handle, and there's obviously links there to all the other places you can find me, and a bit of a merch site and email. If you're interested in becoming a guest, direct message or email, whatever you like, and let me know. We'll have a chat. I'm similar boat really with the recording in advance. I've got a recording next week. Should be on Monday, with a guest I've been on their podcast before, and he does a new Christmas single every year.
Oh wow.
And obviously through us getting chatting and me being on their show, is his brother that came on my show, and then I went on their show. They do a show together about music, records and bands podcasts. So he's going to come on my show on Monday, and his new Christmas single is coming out this weekend. So we're going to talk all about that, as well as all the dad stuff, because he's a dad as well. And so that'll be my episode for next week, and that'll probably see me through Christmas, I would imagine. That's going to be a bit of a record and edit in one night job, just to try and get it out so I can promote it throughout December. And obviously it promotes his Christmas single. So that's probably going to see me through to the end of the year. And then for next year, it'll be, end of January will be the 1 year anniversary. So I have a few ideas, but I'm not sure yet exactly what I'm going to do for that in celebration. And then, always looking out for parents, dads, guests, interesting conversations with anybody, really. So you can give me a shout at Talking Dad UK 1.
Wonderful. And I would recommend it. Jamie is a lovely individual. I've had so much fun speaking with him. It's funny because when speaking with you normally, it really flows. Then as soon as you turn into podcasting mode, you're still a little bit like, okay, Now I'm talking about, here's my email and here's my social media and here's that. And it's one of those things that I find this, I'm not trying to ridicule you. I am exactly the same. I'm like, as soon as it's like, oh, no, guesting on someone's show, I'm all natural and stuff. And as soon as it's almost like they click the fingers, like robot mode, engage. Okay. So I've got in your head, you're like, right, I've got to remember this thing and this thing and this thing and this. I can't remember that thing. What about this thing? And it's just,
I do remembering it, isn't it? You got to remember it. I mean, I know some people that have it written above their computer. So it's always there for them to read. And it's like, oh, I should know it because I've been like using it for a year.
Yeah, it's a funny thing with podcasts, and it's what I always say to people when I press record, and people who are just listeners aren't aware of this unless they've been a guest before, which is just like have the nice, natural, normal conversation, because I like to get to know my guests somewhat before recording if we've never recorded before, especially, or just with like yourself, just catch up a little bit before press record. And then it's like, okay, stop here. Now I have to stop any organic conversation to press a button and now have to start the conversation again in a completely different way. It's a really weird thing. Yeah. It's something I'm still 4+ years in. I'm still not fully used to, because it's so rare for conversations. You know, normally when you leave a conversation, you stop it to go, oh, I need to leave your house that I need to leave, or the other person needs to, or there's something that you're, waiting for a gig or something. There's normally a reason to stop. But in this, it's like, no, there's not a reason to stop. It's, you have to stop to then start the real conversation, even though you're already having one. It's a very bizarre medium. But please reach out to Jamie. He is lovely. He'll be on my show again. And there's a couple of listeners I have who also have podcasts. And I'm hoping that you listeners, certain ones who pretty much always listen, you know who you are, reach out to Jamie. Have a good old time. I'd love to hear some of you guys on Jamie's podcast as well. But it's very exciting stuff. I've been listening to your podcast for a bit. I haven't listened to every episode because, as we discussed on, I think, your podcast, unfortunately, when you become a podcast and you've got loads of friends who are podcasters, there's not enough time in the day to listen to every podcast. But I've listened to a good handful. A lot of them are very fun. All the ones I've listened to have been absolutely stellar. So thank you for coming on my show. Thank you for having me on my show. I'll put links to that in the show notes as well. And if I don't talk to you before, I hope you have a wonderful Christmas and Happy New Year and all that sort of tomfoolery as well.
Yeah, and you. Catch up again soon.
And that's the end of the podcast. Thanks as always for tuning in, guys. And make sure you go give Jamie's podcast all the love on the usual social media places. Make sure you rate and review them on like Good Pods and Apple Podcasts and Podcatcher and all those sorts of other places as well. And obviously you can check out my appearance on there just to get you guys kick-started too. And also in 2022, I have no doubt that me and Jamie will have another great conversation that we will record for you lovely listeners. Whether or not I'll be on my show, his show, or both, I don't know. But I will definitely be talking to him in 2022. So if that's not a reason to subscribe, I don't know what is. In addition to that, what have we got coming up then, guys? So I've got another podcast recorded with Jesse McKinnell. He is the author I spoke to a few weeks ago. One of his books was called Dead Cats, and the other one was called Anarchy and Other Lies. This time we spoke about things that could end the world. So we had a nice, cheery, hour-long conversation on, potential apocalypse situations and those sort of things as well. So that should be out next week off the top of my head. And then to sort of finish up the year, I'm going to have a conversation with Ben of Star Wars Timeline. I've been on Ben's show 4 times. In fact, in the show notes of the last several months of episodes, I've included a link to his YouTube channel because that's where he has his podcast. And it's just a really, really cool long-form conversation. We spoke about each of the sequels of Star Wars, so Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and The Rise of Skywalker. We spoke about all of those, the good parts, the bad parts, our kind of thoughts and opinions on them. They're really, really enjoyable conversations. So if you like long-form conversations about Star Wars, then that's the place to go. But also he's got loads of little videos and short ones that are specifically about certain species and those sort of things. But I will talk about all those things when I do talk to him. But please make sure you check out my appearances on his show because it was a lot of fun. So they're the 2 main guests I've got coming up for the rest of the year. I don't know if I'm doing another UK versus US episode with Moxie. I don't know about that. I'll have to message her and find out because I know we're both quite busy at this time of year, so it may not be till next year. But also, I've obviously guested on quite a few podcasts recently, as well as the Talking Dad UK podcast. I've been on Beer Nuts Productions. I've been on the Hall of Mirrors. I've been on Star Wars Timeline. So as I said, they're in the description as well. I like to have a little section near the bottom which has just got a list of all the guest spots I've done and then links to them on Spotify and etc. And this is another one of those things where I'm going to call you guys out and say, please could you subscribe to me on YouTube? I've included a link in the description. Currently the channel link is just gobbledygook, and I want it to be /genuine Chit-Chat, but I can't do that until I have 100 subscribers. Now, I know almost no one listens on YouTube because you're all audiophiles and love listening on, Spotify and the other podcast apps and things like that. But if any of you do have a YouTube account and you would love to do me a solid, I know a few of you have done that since the last podcast I did, so I want to really shout you guys out and say thank you so much to the ones who have recently subscribed, probably due to me saying about it. But if we could get just a few more of you listeners to do it, it would mean the absolute world to me. It would be so gratifying. But if you don't want to do that, you can obviously share my show on social media and etc. You can find me at Genuine Chit-Chat on all the social media places. And in addition to that, you could rate and review my show, Jamie's show, and any other podcasts on Good Pods, on Podchaser, on, I think Podcast Addict does it as well, on Apple Podcasts. Really, anywhere you listen to it, you can leave a review because it really, really does help the show, as well as sharing it, telling other people about it, and all those sort of things as well. And just to add on to my comment about YouTube earlier, there are certain conversations I've had which have got full video on them as well, including my conversation with Paolo Villanelli, including my conversation with Jesse McKinnell, and the one I release next week will also have that video as well. And I've also put all my conversations in playlists. So if you listen to a conversation, you're like, I really like, listening to Mike talk with someone about science or talking about relationships or talking about this or that. I've got playlists for all those things. And so you can find them there as well. But I think that's really going to be it from me, guys, aside from saying, please check out my Patreon. That's probably the top tier where you can support the show. You can donate money to ourselves. So you can, as little as £1 a month you can give to us. And every month we release loads of additional content. I realised that I've released now 75 things on the Afterthoughts exclusive feed. So 75 things. A lot of them are like full episodes that were split in Genuine Chit-Chat and things, as well as a couple of book reviews that were early. But the majority of them are Afterthoughts episodes, which is myself and Megan talking about movies or TV shows that we've watched. Some are spoiler-free, some are spoiler-filled, some are older movies, some are brand new ones that we just recently went to the cinema to see. We've got a few more recorded we've just done. We've done one for Gone Girl, we've got one for Last Jedi, we've got one for the road trip we went on to Scotland quite recently, so a wide variety of things there. We're also rewatching the Harry Potter films at the moment. We watched Chamber of Secrets last night. And also we're going to be, doing afterthoughts on those. We're going to be watching some Christmas films as well. So if you want like 10 to 20 minute long episodes that are quite easy to digest, some are spoiler free, some have got spoilers, and just me and Megan just talking nonsense about these things for a short period of time, then please consider checking out patreon.com/genuine Chit-Chat, as it would mean the absolute world to me. We've already got quite a few people on there, but the more the merrier. The more of you that can support the show on Patreon, the more time I can invest into podcasting and releasing exclusive content on there. But if you do that, you will get at least one episode of Afterthoughts every week, and often you will get two as well, and a few extra bonus things at Christmas and other times of year like that. And even in times where I don't release an episode of Genuine Chit-Chat due to being on holiday or Christmas or whatever, on Patreon there's always something to be released on these Sundays as well. So that's my plug for everything. But thank you so much for listening, guys. I appreciate each and every one of you. Go on social media, give Jamie some love at Talking Dad UK1 on Twitter and on Instagram and stuff. And just thank you for listening. I hope you continue to listen up to Christmas, but just in case you don't, I hope you have a great Christmas and New Year. And I'll talk to you all soon.
You have just experienced host, creator, everything elser of Genuine Chit-Chat, and also the host and creator of Star Wars Comics and Canon, found on the Comics in Motion podcast, Mike Burton.